Yo, what's going on, snipers, and welcome back to our Edmonton Oilers Throwback 2010 franchise mode here in NHL 25. So in last episode, if you did not catch it, we offloaded some pieces from our team, and we simulated more of the season, but this team is still doing relatively good as we are 39-21-5, and it looks like we're probably going to end up being a playoff team this year, which kind of sucks because we really didn't want to be a playoff team. But our team has kind of over-simulated to an extent where almost it's impossible for us to miss the playoffs, I feel like, unless we lose a majority of the games remaining this season. So kind of not too sure what to expect the rest of the way, but there's a good chance that we're probably just going to stay pat with the current roster and see if this team actually does make the playoffs, because obviously if we start offloading pieces, our team should probably be worse, but if they still make the playoffs with a worse roster, it's kind of like counterintuitive, so we're probably just going to stay with the current roster that we have. As you can see, we're third place in the Western Conference right now, and if we start this off also off points percentage, we are also third place. The last team that's in a playoff spot at the moment is 51.6% on points percentage. We are 63.8. So for us to drop down from below 8th is going to take a lot of work. Basically, we have to drop down to like below 50.8%, which I don't think is going to happen unless we astronomically lose a bunch of games. Like, we literally have to drop down by 13%. So I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but we'll see what ends up happening with the roster in terms of simulation the rest of the way. It's been, like I said, an interesting season because I wasn't expecting this roster to do so good. We traded away Surrey in last episode to the Ducks. We brought in like guys like Lucas Pisa to kind of like make us a little bit lower end and also have kind of some younger talent in the lineup, and we still end up winning games, which was really confusing. So I think it might be the main thing is because we have Alex Hemsky at the moment, and he's been still killing it. He's well over point per game, the only Oiler over point per game at the moment. So definitely have to look into potentially trading him away this off season, as well as guys like Patrick O'Sullivan have been simulating really good, so maybe it wasn't a great idea to hold on to O'Sullivan longer. And then Sean Horkov has still actually been pretty good for his age. He's definitely still one of these guys that we'd have to look to get him to waive his no-movement clause at some point in time to trade him away. Tom Gilbert's had a big year this year, so that's probably helped things a bit. So just a lot of guys have started to step up this season, which is not what I was anticipating, like I said. So I feel like we're not going to be a playoff team for very long this year because we are definitely weaker than last year. But if we have at least like some young guys getting more experience, like Ladislav Smid getting some experience, I do not mind that. Or actually not Ladislav Smid, Lucas Pisa, I should say. Because Pisa is the one I brought in. He's kind of just basically as good as Smid, but he's basically 4 years younger. So I kind of like those like little sneaky additions like Lucas Pisa. I don't think he's going to be the most insane player for us, but I think he could be a solid lockdown defenseman, maybe for the top 6 as these years go on. And then our goaltending, despite us also sending Nikolai Khabibulin down to the AHL, which I know is a kind of an unrealistic thing, Devin Dubnyk and Jeff Delorier have been actually both really good so far in their games that they've played. So our goaltending tandem might be a little bit weak on paper, as you can see, a 79 and an 82, but I think they are definitely the tandem we would want to be running if we want to actually have strong goaltending, I guess, because Khabibulin actually, I guess, was doing okay when he was up here too. But obviously he's got a long cap hit. He could retire at the end of the season, so I just decided to send him to the AHL. We could call him back up for the playoffs if we make it, but right now we'll probably run the 2 younger guys because Devin Dubnyk right now has been pretty damn solid this season. So a lot of weird simulation, but hopefully since we're probably going to be a playoff team, hopefully it's a nice little run, and then we could obviously reset a little bit in the off season instead of right now. But anyways, with that said, let's get in your guys' comments, see what you guys have to say about last episode, and then we will get into simulating the rest of the season, taking a look at what trades go around at the league in the 2011 trade deadline. So the first comment is from Jared the Rabbit, who just has another one of his little comparison things from what EA's names are to what they actually should be named. So he says Vyacheslav Goldobin and Jay Fada, Visvaldes Golds, I think that's pronounced, and then he says, and Johan Fuchs. So that's who they should actually be named, I guess. The next comment is from Andy, who says, you have to take a real bad coach to tank, like C or worse. And yeah, that's probably the problem we made, because we did also change the head coach. We got rid of an A coach. We brought in a B- coach, and it still has made us simulate pretty damn solid. despite if you go to his stats, because this guy's only a 58% team fit. So I thought having a guy that's below 60 regardless of overall would help. But I guess we need definitely a worse coach in the offseason if we want to start tanking in future years. We'll probably leave it the rest of the season, because at this point it's kind of, the season's almost a write-off that we're going to make the playoffs. But yeah, definitely in the next few off seasons we should probably look for some worse coaches that still fit with obviously our younger guys. Like, that was definitely the top priority, is finding a coach that works with our younger options like Gagne and all that. So hopefully we can find a C-rated coach that's good with all those guys as well at some point in time. And the last and final comment is from Noah M47, who says, yeah, maybe you just ride the team and get the cup. They're proving they want it. Let's go 2011 anti-tank Oilers, or hashtag I should say, let's go 2011 anti-tank Oilers. And yeah, this Oilers team definitely assimilating a lot differently than the ones in real life. I don't really know what the reasoning is, like I said, but at least I think a lot of our top prospects are top young guys that we've had on our roster at the beginning, like Gagne and Cogliano. I think these early years are definitely helping them out a lot in terms of getting good growth early on, and then hopefully we could surround them with some good talent down the road in draft classes and all that. So definitely in the offseason is probably the best time for us to offload some key pieces from this roster. Like I said, like Alex Hemsky could probably get dealt. We might end up looking to maybe moving out from Patrick O'Sullivan, but he still kind of fits the young bill with this team, so maybe not. Sean Horkov, we have to get him to waive. A lot of these other guys are relatively young, bottom sixers and stuff, so I don't really care too much about moving out them. But defensively, like, maybe look to move out Tom Gilbert after maybe a Norris Trophy winning season or close to a Norris Trophy winning season. Maybe move out Ryan Whitney. Jason Strudwick's obviously going to be a free agent. And then goalie-wise, the main one to get rid of is probably going to be Heavy Bullen, since he might still be playing at the end of the year. It really depends if he retires or not, but for right now, we definitely got to offload some of these veteran players, and it's probably definitely starts with Alex Hemsky, I would assume. Even though he's 27 only, like, he's not a very old player at this point, it would be nice to capitalize on his value before he potentially becomes a free agent. Like, he's on pace to have a better year this year than he did last year, I think, but he's definitely been our best player in this franchise mode, and he's been carrying his team for the most part. So if we got rid of him, it should hypothetically knock our offense down quite a margin. So we kind of hope for that. But like I said, with the younger guys like Gagne getting up to an 86, Cogliano up to an 85, like, at least these guys are starting to outgrow their potentials. Eberle's getting a big chance this year in his rookie season, and he's doing really well. So there's definitely some promise with this roster, and then hopefully, like I said, we could just find some good players in future drafts to kind of surround those guys with. So with that said, we are going to go to a day after the trade deadline, because I am not going to make a single trade. I'm just going to see if this team makes the playoffs. If they don't make the playoffs, that's not the worst case scenario, obviously. If we do make the playoffs, it's not the end of the world either, I guess, at this point, since we pretty much almost have it locked up that we should be a playoff team. So I just don't want to give up too much assets to make us better right now, and I do not want to give up any assets that's going to make us much worse. So let's just go continue simulating and see what deals happen at the deadline. We just lost 5-2 to Minnesota, but that's okay. Any blockbuster trades? Is Tanner Glass is on waivers? Do I want Tanner Glass? I don't really like the guy, but 78 at 27. He's not really that bad, but he's a grinder. He's not going to really do much for you offensively. Like, if we look at his stats, 5 games only over the last 2 years, 6 penalty minutes, no playoff games, no points. Yeah, he's not going to really do too much. He's not a bad player to bring in, really, but at this stage, we could literally sign him in free agency if we really wanted to. So, all right, so there was no blockbuster trades according to the game, but let's take a look and see if there was anything crazy, because I don't know if it knows how to identify a blockbuster in Custom League too much, but let's see if there was anything crazy that we were not expecting. So, first and foremost, Mark Vizentine's rights already got dealt to the Buffalo Sabres with a second and a third. Washington acquires a third and Steve Montador, so Montador on his way to the Capitals, potentially going for a chance to win the Stanley Cup. The Rangers acquired 2 prospects, being Ryan Ellis and Brian Russ, so 2 big prospects for Ryan Callahan. Damn, all right. So the Ryans get dealt for each other, but Ryan Callahan joining the Preds. That's a pretty interesting addition for the Nashville Predators at this point in time. I mean, when you think about it, Ryan Callahan in real life got traded for Martin St. Louis. That was a couple of years after this. I think that was like 2013-14, right? somewhere around that stage. I'm pretty sure he was dealt for him. I can't remember exactly, but I just definitely know they flip-flop teams. But Ryan Callahan joins the Nashville Predators. That's a pretty big one, I would say. Aside from that, the LA Kings acquire 3rd to 7th and Ryan Shannon from Ottawa. And then Ottawa gets 2 prospects, a generating guy named Avery Wissmuller, and then also Jeff Berube. All right. Not necessarily a great trade for Ottawa, but Ryan Shannon's not really valuable at this point. The Phoenix Coyotes have acquired the rights of John Klingberg, a 3rd and a 6th from Anaheim. And then Anaheim gets a 3rd, and 2 others. I wish I would see the other 2 others, but anyways, John Klingberg's undrafted, or not undrafted, his signing rights are getting dealt to the Coyotes, so that's kind of interesting. I wonder who the 2 others are, if they're players or not. There's got to be players going to Anaheim in that deal, but I'm not too sure who. Carolina's acquired a 2nd-round pick from the New York Islanders for Tomo Ruutu. So Tomo Ruutu on his way to Long Island. That's an interesting one. I don't know why the Islanders are adding at this point in time, but I guess maybe they're having a good season sim too, which is kind of strange because obviously they shouldn't be super well at this point. But that's a nice little addition for the play next to John Tavares probably and all that. Tomo Ruutu. Tomo Ruutu used to hit like a truck. If you guys didn't know, you look at his hitting stats, like I think there was like seasons where that guy had over 300 hits. Like he was very physical, to say the least. Ooh, another trade interesting here so far. Montreal's acquired Brad Boyes and Colby Armstrong from the St. Louis Blues. Obviously, Colby Armstrong actually did play for the Habs around this point in time. I know he also played for the Leafs, but so 2 big players going to Montreal. St. Louis gets Yaroslav Halak, a 3rd, and Clements. So Halak is on his way to St. Louis, like in real life. That's actually sick as shit, man. I've seen that happen before, I think, too, in Tugi's franchise mode, but I can't remember. But Halak to St. Louis. Yeah, that's interesting. I definitely got to kind of hide my face and make a screenshot of that and crop that out and send it to people because that's actually pretty sick. But that's an interesting deal because Montreal is getting 2 really good players to help them out in maybe a playoff run. But Montreal ends up prioritizing Carey Price as they did in real life. And St. Louis gets now themselves a nice young goaltender that's already signed for like 5 years. So that deal works well for both teams, I think. Dallas acquires a 3rd-rounder, Matt Gilroy and Scott Wedgwood. So Scott Wedgwood on his way to Dallas a little bit early, I think. Matt Gilroy never played for the Stars, but 2 younger guys and a 3rd-round pick. New York acquires Toby Peterson, a 5th and a 6th. Why is Toby Peterson going for that much? I wonder if Toby Peterson's just having a really good year or something like that, but that's a lot of value for Toby Peterson, I guess. I mean, technically, Gilroy and Wedgwood don't have huge upside, I guess. 3rd-round pick might have upside, but I guess maybe it's not too much. Minnesota acquires UC Jokinen a 3rd, as well as Patrick Dwyer from Carolina. So Carolina offloading UC Jokinen and Patrick Dwyer, which is interesting. Carolina gets back a 2nd-rounder and Marco Scandella. So not bad. I mean, that's a good little prospect. And a 2nd-round pick in this universe is pretty valuable. So aside from that, Atlanta acquires Francois Beauchemin from Florida for 2 2nd-rounders. So Beauchemin's been dealt 2 times now in the first 2 years because he started on Toronto, I think, in this. Or maybe it was on Anaheim. I can't remember, one of the 2. But then he got dealt to Florida. And then he got dealt from Florida to Atlanta now. All right. Ottawa's acquired a 2nd-rounder and a 5th-rounder. Phoenix gets Chris Kelly. All right, so Chris Kelly on his way to Phoenix in 2011 instead of the Boston Bruins. Bill Guerin gets dealt with a 3rd-round pick to Tampa from Dallas. So Dallas brought in Bill Guerin in free agency, and now he's on his way to the Tampa Bay Lightning for Alex Killorn and Mark Barberio. So Alex Killorn's given up on a little bit early by the Tampa Bay Lightning, and Dallas gets his rights. Or actually, he was already signed, I think. And Mark Barberio, I think, was an unsigned player, but maybe they signed him to his ELC after year 1. Pittsburgh gets Scott Hannon, Glenn Metropolitan, Jeez, I almost said Pollock for some reason. Shout out to Jesse Pollock, and Radek Bonk. So those 3 guys, so 3 veterans going to Pittsburgh. Colorado gets Brooks Orpik and a 4th-round pick. Didn't Colorado have Brooks Orpik at one point, but he never played a game there? Like, I got to look at this for a second here. Brooks Orpik. Let me see. I think he was dealt there, and then he eventually became a Capital, right? Yeah. Oh, no, he went from the Capitals after he won the Stanley Cup with the Capitals. His rights were dealt to the Colorado Avalanche, basically with Philip Grubauer, for a 2nd-round pick that became Martin Feravari. Now, what's interesting is after that trade, He did not sign with Colorado, and then he re-signed back in Washington again. So it's a little bit of a nothing deal there, but Orpik might actually play games in Colorado, which is kind of neat. A lot of trades in this, it seems like. Toronto acquires Nito Niederreiter, a second, and two others. Tampa gets John Mitchell, Keith Tkachuk, and two others. So Tampa's loading up a lot of players right now, and they gave up a prospect like Nito Niederreiter to Toronto. So Toronto getting some prospects to build up that team. Eventually, they might be a playoff team, but it's going to take a long time still. Florida's acquired a second rounder, a seventh rounder, and Steve Ott from Dallas. Dallas gets back a third, a fifth, and Christoph Schubert. Interesting deal there. Detroit gets a fourth, a fifth, and Sean Morrison. I don't remember how it's pronounced. St. Louis gets a prospect named Stanislav Vorobyov, who's generated, and Andre Nestrasil. All right. Buffalo gets Barrett Jackman and Vernon Fiddler with a sixth-round pick. Ottawa gets back a second rounder and a fourth. Okay, offloading a lot of veterans. The Islanders get a second rounder and Wojtek Wolski. So Wolski gets dealt to the Islanders instead of the Rangers, which is kind of cool. So the Islanders get a pretty good player that's been losing morale because he's been scratched a lot. The Coyotes get back Matt Molson, though, in a third-round pick. So Matt Molson doesn't get to play with John Tavares too long, I guess. Vancouver acquires Tim Gleason from Carolina, and Carolina gets back a third, and two others, apparently. So a lot of different deals. A lot of interesting ones, I would say. I'd say definitely the biggest one that surprised me the most was the early one we were looking at. Like the Halak deal is pretty big. The Tomarutu one's pretty cool, I would say. And then the Ryan Callahan one's probably one of the bigger ones out there as well. So 3 big deals at least, maybe even more than that. But a pretty busy trade deadline for 2010-11. So with that said, I think we're ready to continue to simulate the rest of the 2010-11 season and see if we could lock up a playoff spot. Obviously, like I said, we don't really want to be a playoff team, but I didn't really want to just like offsell a lot of players and then all of a sudden like still make the playoffs, because that would have been disastrous. So let's take the rest of the season a little bit slow. So we will go to the 16th, go half of the month, and see if we could start winning some games or if we're going to start losing games after this deadline. So win and a loss there. There is a loss there. So back-to-back shutout losses, not great. As Lucas Spies has been injured with a strained hamstring, so of course the guy I literally just brought in last episode has been already injured. Let's just go replace player on that. Carolina's a win. All right. Rangers is a win as well. Yeah, see, this team still has that consistency where we don't lose really more than 2 games in a row. So, yeah, this team is definitely still doing good. We are getting closer to 50 wins, which I don't know how this team could win 50 games, but we have 10 games left. Let's just, I guess, finish strong because we probably are going to be clinching a playoff spot soon. And I feel like kind of having a higher seed wouldn't be a bad idea, but maybe it also means we'll be a first-round exit or something like that. I don't know if we're technically a cheese team on paper or what. Like, there's definitely a lot of better teams out there in the NHL than us, so I'm kind of surprised we're simulating as good as we are. So we'll get Spiza back in here. We've been playing him on the top pairing with Tom Gilbert just to maybe get him some growth. Shout out to some players growing in the bottom 6, though. Like Robert Nilsson's up to an 81. Poyot's an 80. So, honestly, like our depth is not bad, I would say. But definitely a lot of it needs still more growth in order to be really effective down the road. All right, let's see what we got here. So, game against Chicago. As Marc-Antoine Pouliot's now been injured out till April 1st. Let's go replace player on that. Chicago we lose to, not a surprise really. Chicago should be a really good team still at this point. The Islanders we beat 5-1 though, so we are 44-25-5. Have we clinched a playoff spot yet? Yes, we have. So we are going to make the playoffs, so you can see that's why I said we just basically got to stay as is, because we didn't even have really that crazy of a month so far, yet we still made the playoffs and clinched one. So let's get through the rest of this a little bit quicker, I guess, and wrap up the regular season and all that, but playoffs again for the second consecutive year. Maybe it's a good thing, maybe it's not. Like I said, it's a good experience for the young guys, but like I said, in the offseason, we could look to flip some people. All right, we have 3 games left. We have 100 points. The Canucks could still take the Northwest Division from us, which might not be a bad idea, but let's go through these last 3 games and see where we finish in the standings. As Marc-Antoine Pouliot is back, so we'll get him back in here as Jeff Jacques was replacing him on that third line. We definitely don't have the best depth forwards on our team, but that's okay because we're not really trying to make a statement this playoffs We just want guys to get experience, I guess, basically. So Montreal, Carolina, and Atlanta. Can we beat any of these teams? We beat Montreal 4-1. Carolina, who's made some big trades this year. We lose to them 5-0. Damn. And Atlanta, as Gilbert Brule gets injured right before the playoffs. That kind of sucks. He gets injured with a wrist sprain. I'm just going to replace player, but we're going to have to move Horkov, I guess, into the top 6. But we do end up finishing with 104 points and a 49-27-6 record. So that's definitely a lot better than I was anticipating this year for us, but it is what it is. And yeah, we do end up winning the Northwest Division by 2 points. So let's take a look at what went well for us this season and what didn't so much. So let's go to Stat Central. Let me hide actually this so you guys can't see anything. And so I can't see anything because I want to not be spoiled on player stats and all that. Bam. Okay, so we end up finishing, like I said, first in the Northwest. In terms of the entire league, we finished as the 6th best team in the league. That's not too bad. That's better than expected. We kind of stayed on the exact same points percentage to start this episode, so pretty nice. And we were technically the second best, or third best team in the West. I almost forgot about Detroit being a Western Conference team, but Detroit was definitely the best West team. Then it was LA, then it was us. So us and the LA Kings seem to always be around each other in terms of standings. Goals for per game, only scoring 2.9 goals for per game. So our offense isn't the craziest. Like, we're more of a defensive team. We're down here as the worst offensive team to make the playoffs other than Tampa. Yeah, we're the worst offensive team in the playoffs. But Tampa's right there too. They're actually tied exactly with us. So we're just equally as bad. In terms of goals against per game, we are allowed 2.88 goals against per game, which has us as a top 10 defensive team. So a top 10 defensive team tied with the Dallas Stars. Not too far off teams like Vancouver and New Jersey either. So kind of not what I was expecting with, obviously, we getting rid of Soure. We also got rid of, like I said, Heavy Bull into the AHL. Like, we shouldn't have been at strong of a defensive team, but we were. We only scored 2 more goals than we allowed. So kind of a weird season for that. Power play percentage, 14%, is still not very good either. So our power play wasn't very good. And then our penalty kill is our bread and butter. It was the second best in the league. So the only thing really going well for us is our defensive play and our penalty kill. Aside from that, we're pretty much like not good offensively. So that's a bit scary. But 20-15-6 on home ice, not bad on home ice, but we were much better on the road, 29-12. All right. Were we the best road team in the NHL? No, we weren't. We were the third best road team. Okay. 6-3-1 in our last 10 games. All right, let's take a look at some stats. So the leader in points, of course, Ales Hemsky, finishes just over a point per game. Let's actually hide stuff again so I can just change this over by each position. So it's more of a surprise to us who led in points and all that stuff in other areas. Boom, and good. Okay. So Sean Horkov, 63 points. Pretty good year for Sean Horkov. Like I said, it would be nice if we could get him to waive his no movement clause in the off season, because or else we're going to have to deal with it for 2 more seasons. But yeah, Sean Horkov's still pretty solid producer for his age. Sam Gagner had 63 points as well. Really liking Sam Gagner's development so far here early on. Last year he was better technically, but I still feel like 63 points for a guy that's got only top 6 forward potential is pretty good. So definitely got to utilize him. His faceoffs improved drastically this year too. So he's getting better at the faceoff dot. His takeaways are getting better too. So he's becoming all around a complete player, which is really nice. So shout out to Sam Gagner. Cogliano on 48 points, not bad. Obviously, he's only got the medium top 9 potential, but he's still a second-line forward. So he looks like he's going to be a really good penalty killer for us throughout his career. So we definitely got to sign him and Gagner long-term. Is it this offseason? Gagner is next offseason. Cogliano's this offseason. I probably would sign Gagner long-term. Cogliano might be a guy that gets like a 5-year deal or something. No. Gilbert Brule on 43 points. Obviously got injured in the last game of the season. So a pretty solid year for Brule despite that injury. It was better than last year, but he did also miss 12 games last season, so maybe not. But solid year for Gilbert. Then we also have Pouliot, who did get injured a little bit this season, missed 6 games, but still 29 points. Not bad, I guess, for a bottom 6 guy. And then Patolny, despite being only a 77 depth forward, 16 points is usable for a 4th line guy. Minus 10 kind of sucks, but I don't really expect him to get much better at his age anyways. Left wing side of things, we have Patrick O'Sullivan on 68 points, 24 goals. So O'Sullivan's looking actually pretty solid, but like I said, I don't really know if we should get rid of him because he might make us overstimulate, but he's turning out to being actually a pretty solid player for our team. So just not great defensively in the playoffs, but he's been good so far in the regular seasons. We did sign him for a 6-year deal, so we should probably honor at least a few years of that contract. Robert Nilsson on 25 points and a minus 14. I mean, it's okay for a bottom 6 guy. Not great plus minus on a bottom 6 guy. So our bottom 6 definitely gives up a lot of goals for, I guess. Liam Reddick's on 19 points. That's actually really not that bad as well for a 77. So a couple of those 77s are actually similarly decently. And then Ryan Jones as well as a 78 at 17 points. Menard on 3 points in 3 games. And then JF Jacques scored a goal in 7 games. So looks like everybody was doing work when they were in the lineup at least. And then from a right wing perspective, obviously Hemsky on the 84 points this year, 79 games, so he did miss a couple due to injury, but pretty much was on pace to have a better season this year. More goals, less assists, less points by 1, but also played 3 less games. Yeah, it was a good year for Hemsky again. So we probably want to look at capitalizing on moving him in the offseason if possible. Even though he's been really good also in the playoffs when he's played, so I do like Hemsky a lot. Like, it would be nice to have him as a captain for this team for a number of years, but we might have to part ways with him, which means we probably need a new thumbnail athlete if we do part ways with him in the offseason. So who do you guys think should be the next thumbnail athlete if we do move on from Hemsky at some point? Like, should it be Jordan Eberle? Should it be somebody instead like maybe Sam Gagner would be perfect because he is technically like maybe the best player on this team right now that isn't Hemsky. Yeah, I think it could be, honestly, Gagner, Cogliano, somebody like that. Or we could even go with, like, a goalie like Devin Dubnyk instead. But shout out to Jordan Eberle. Good rookie season for him. 22 goals and 41 points. So he's a point every second game, basically. And 22 goals as a rookie is not really that bad at all either. So I like that season from Jordan Eberle. Doesn't take a lot of penalty minutes either. Decent takeaway numbers. All right. Good stuff. Will be interesting to see what he can do in his first ever playoffs this year. And then from a defensive standpoint, Tom Gilbert at 53 points. Good year from Tom Gilbert. Like I said, another guy that could potentially get dealt in the offseason. But yeah, he stepped up big time this year. Like, this is definitely a big year for him in terms of, like, getting more ice time and all that because Sure got dealt throughout the season. But yeah, more points, more goals, everything you like to see. And then obviously playoffs last year, he actually didn't really do too well. So I'm hoping for a big playoffs from him if we are going to go far this year. So shout out to Tom Gilbert. 30 points from Ryan Whitney, not bad. Jeff Petrie on 16 in his first season. That's okay, I guess. He is up to an 81 overall, so he is developing, which is nice. Like, I don't expect him to be the craziest offensive producer, but if he could at least give us like 30 points or something at some stage, that'd be good. Ladislav Schmid on 12 points, not bad for him. Spiza on 10 points in 78 games. Then we also have Strudwick on 8 points in 82, and Chorney had nothing in 5. I forgot if Spiza played any games with the Ducks this season. Oh, yeah, he did. Yeah, so 51 games with us, 8 points and a +2, basically. But as I mentioned in the last episode, Spiza's there to provide defense. Look at the amount of hits he had this season, like 118 with just us, 45 with the Ducks. He blocks a lot of shots as well, like over 100 blocks. Like, he's definitely the kind of guy that we just need to have as a shutdown D-man. So I like that as a penalty killing option. Strudwick on 8 points in 82 games. Somehow scored 7 goals and 1 assist, but it is what it is. And then Chorney had nothing points. Goaltending-wise, Dubnyk posted a .916 save percentage and a 2.7 goals against average through 47 games. So Devin Dubnyk is probably the guy being our starter next year. So I think we need to find a way to get rid of the Bullen Wall if he doesn't retire this offseason, because Devin Dubnyk has kind of arrived, and he's arrived quite nicely. And then Jeff Delorier even is really good this season. I don't know why that is, because actually last year he was bad. AHL he was good this year, so maybe he just needed a little bit of a reset in the AHL. But Jeff Delorier improved, or defensive play improved a lot from last year, I guess. So shout out to those guys. Let's take a look at some stats around the league. Sue 11 points, which I'm assuming is still going to be 7. And the answer is no. Datsuk came out of nowhere. 131 points for Pavel Datsuk this season. God damn, man. He must have had a really good last month or so of the season, right? Because I'm pretty sure when we looked at like 60-something games in, he wasn't He might have been in the top 3, but he definitely was below 7. Like, if we go to split stats here on Datsuk, late in the season, he had 26 points in 13 games in March, and in April so far, 11 points in 5 games. So, yeah, these last 2 months, he's been absolutely killing it. So, that's probably why. But Sebin finishes second in points. Nick Backstrom finishes third in points. So, 2 Capitals tied exactly in points. 100 assists this year for Nick Backstrom. Crazy. Kopitar, 122 points. He was the reigning Art Ross Trophy winner, right? Yeah, he won all the awards pretty much last season, so Kopitar not going to win it this time around. Zetterberg on 120, Ovechkin on 115, 69 goals for Ovi. Damn, a lot of 100-point guys this season. Most goals this season is going to be Ovechkin as well, so Ovi's going to win his first Richard, because I don't think he won last year, right? No, he didn't, but he won the Stanley Cup already, so he does now have a Richard, 69 goals. He beats out Datsuk and Parise, who also had 60 goals. And he had a bunch of 50-goal scorers like Rick Nash, who just missed 60, Ryan Smith, Jerome McGinley, Evgeny Malkin, and Alex Semin. Most assists is probably Backstrom by a large margin. Yep, not a surprise. So Nick Backstrom finishes with 100 assists, and then you had Kopitar with 79. So quite a big drop-off there of 21 assists. From a defensive standpoint, best defenseman this season, Mike Green in Washington. So yeah, Washington's just completely cracked this season. They could definitely go for a back-to-back this year. 75 points, 79 games, plus 34. Brian Rafalski up there with 68. Erik Karlsson's already up there in 67. So Karlsson is developing quite nicely. Andrei Markov on 65. Drew Doughty on 61. Zubov on 60. All right. Looking pretty good. Most goals by a D-man. 23 goals from Dion Phaneuf this season. God damn. He had more goals than assists. So Dion going ham apparently in goals. Interesting. But he was minus 23 this season because the Leafs are just bad still. Best goalie this season in terms of wins, Jimmy Howard with 49. Most shutouts this season is going to be Jimmy Howard with 7. Best save percentage by a starter is going to be Mike Smith in Tampa. Kind of an interesting one with a 918 save percentage. Actually, Ryan Miller's up there with a 920 as well. But Smith did play 5 more games. But the better save percentage is definitely Miller. Best goals against average by a starter is going to be Ryan Miller. So it's probably going to be Ryan Miller's Vezina, this trophy this season. But they could give it to other guys too, like Varlamov definitely had a good year too, but his save percentage was a little bit low. So there's the goaltending. Any goalie goals this season? We saw that Pavlik scored last episode, but anybody else? Yes. Peter Budaj also scored a goal this season. Interesting. Let's take a look at who these goalies scored against just for some fun extra stats, but that's interesting to see that Pavlik obviously scored a goal and Budaj in the same season. So, where do I see goalie goals technically? I guess here. Away. It was an away game within a division. Let's see. Who did he score against? Who did he score against? The answer is going to be the Florida Panthers. So, Andrei Pavlik scored against Florida. All right, that makes kind of some sense. What about Peter Budaj? Who did he score against on Colorado? It's kind of fun just looking at stats like this. Like, that's why I really like that the box scores and stuff are in these games now. So for Peter Budaj, he scored against somebody in March. The answer was the Chicago Blackhawks. Damn. So he scored against the Blackhawks in his only game he played against them. So shout out to Peter Budaj for netting a goal just like Andrei Pavlik. I think that's the first time I've seen 2 goalies score in the same season too, so that's kind of neat. It's kind of neat. Most points by a goalie. 4 assists from Backstrom and Brodeur. Okay, not really surprised on that. Best rookie skater this season is going to be that Olsen guy in Columbus, but he had a minus 15, so I don't know if that's going to make him not win the Rookie of the Year, but Tyler Seguin finishes second in rookie points on St. Louis. Kyle Turris up there at 50 for the Yotes. Jeff Skinner on 45 for the Yotes as well, so Skinner and Turris might be playing together. Jordan Eberle for us finishes top 5. That's great to see. He was also probably second in goals, only behind Seguin. Letestu up there at 39, Grabner 35, etc. All right. So there is all that. Now the question is, who are we playing in the first round of the playoffs? And are we going to be a first round exit this year, or are we going to have a good run like last season? Like, because last year was kind of like a run of that weren't expecting. So we're going to be taking on San Jose first round. So that's going to be very, very tough, my guess. But yeah, San Jose is kind of an underrated team. They definitely understimulated a bit. They went 46, 31, and 5. In terms of comparison during the season, we were 22nd in goals for, but they were 7th in goals for. So they're a great offensive team. Meanwhile, we both almost had the exact same point leaders in terms of point production. But goals against were way better defensive team. We were 9th. They were 20th. Power play percentage, they were 3rd. We were 22nd. Penalty kill, they were 17th. We were 2nd. So basically, it's a good offensive team versus a good defensive team. So that should be an interesting matchup for sure. So let's go to view lines and see what we're working with in terms of San Jose. Obviously, Joe Thornton's probably there still, Pavelski. It's probably a similar Sharks team to the beginning of this franchise mode because I don't think they have a lot of cap space to make moves, but let's see if they brought in anything since the start of the franchise mode. Oh my god, yeah, that top 6 is kind of nasty, and they also still have Sergei Fedorov. I forgot about that. But first line, Danny Heatley, Joe Thornton, and Joe Pavelski. Absolutely cracked top line, especially when it's like prime Heatley. Second line has Patrick Marleau, Logan Couture, and Devin Setaguchi. Really good top 6. Almost all X factors too, which is insane. So yeah, that's going to be scary. Definitely can see why they have good goal scoring. Third line, Torrey Mitchell, Sergei Fedorov, and David Moss. So they brought in David Moss. He was a free agent signing. He picked up 66 points this year as a third line guy. 20 power play points. God damn. So shout out to David Moss. Didn't expect that much production. Sergei Fedorov is still doing probably pretty good at his age. Yeah, 57 points. And then Torrey Mitchell. How has he done? 37 points. I mean, that's okay still. That's pretty good. Fourth line has Darren Hadar. So Darren Hadar is getting a chance to be a full-time NHLer, really. 22 points, minus 13. That's still not bad production. He's playing next to Scott Nickel, who's more defensively minded. And Ryan Clough being on the fourth line is pretty insane. So that depth is nasty on offense. Absolutely nasty. From a defensive standpoint, they have Vlasic and Boyle. So Vlasic and Dan Boyle, great 1-2. Second pairing's a little bit on the weaker end. Kent Huskins and Jason Demers, but it's still solid. And then they also have Justin Braun and Doug Murray. So I can see why they were more of an offensive team. Their defensive core might give up a lot of goals. Vlasic and Boyle's good, but aside from that, I'd say it's kind of average, I guess. And then goalies, Nabokov is still there, so Nabokov is a good goalie, of course. And Thomas Greiss. From a scratch perspective, Shane O'Brien's there now. Jamie McGinn's a healthy scratch, and Nick Wallin. Yeah, that's a good Sharks team. That team is probably going to blow us out. They're probably going to blow us up. If we somehow beat them, it's going to be like last year when we beat Detroit. Like, we definitely don't have any business beating a team like this, but if we do, it's because the game wants to give us it. So yeah, that's going to be definitely a tough matchup, especially trying to contain this top line. Like, Thornton's obviously going to produce on a really good level. Like, only 86 points this year is kind of lower than I was anticipating, but he's playing next to Heatley, who could score goals, pick up points. Like, all those guys in that top 6 and top 9, even for that matter, could put up points. So going to be a tough matchup, but we'll see if we're able to play to our strength, which is our defensive play, or not. So anyways, guys, that's going to do it for this episode of our Edmonton Oilers Throwback 2010 franchise mode. So in next episode, we'll take it to the first round of playoffs against Joe Thornton in the San Jose Sharks. As we look to kind of do what we did last year and kind of surprise some teams, but at the same time, if we're a first round exit, I don't think it's a terrible thing because obviously we're drafting higher, and then maybe we'll have an easier time trying to move up in this year's draft class. So let me see that below, and I'll see you guys next time.